Recording now, both down, and we're going. This is the home of Jack Freeland. Jack is your given name?
That's right.
Okay. Freeland. And we're in Barrackville, West Virginia, on Saturday, December 4, I believe, 1976 in the morning. Is that right?
That's correct.
Mr. Eli Zivkovich is here operating the microphone, and you and I have renewed acquaintance because we both spent about 10 days in 1968 at the Farmington No. 9 disaster in different roles. So
that's correct.
I was connected with, as you recall, Paramount Clinic's support operation for the families and the people rescued, and you were then connected, and still are, with the Sheriff's Office of Marion County.
Well, that's correct. I was Deputy Sheriff at that time.
Okay. You still are Deputy Sheriff.
Still
Who
Deputy
was, in November 1968, the Chief Deputy Sheriff then?
Charles Dodd.
And that was under Sheriff Bob Tennant?
Robert Tennant.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Would you tell me what you know happened on the early morning, on the midnight shift on November 20, 1968, that pertains to Farmington? What was were you out cruising, and who else was on duty and so forth?
We were in the office, and Lawrence Thompson was on duty as a road deputy or field deputy. Richard Martin was the desk deputy, on the desk sergeant on that shift, and we had came in the office somewhere around, we don't know approximate time, 5:40, 5:45, something like that, and which time
Needles moving okay?
At which time he gave us a call that they needed some assistance over at No. 9, reference their communications were out. They were having what they called a telephone problem.
Okay, there was no statement that you were aware of, no alarm that there'd been an explosion. That all came later. At that point, I think you mentioned earlier, there was even a little bit of annoyance. What's this all about?
Yeah,
you know?
okay, yeah.
You were running their communications.
Right.
Okay, because if it had been a disaster, you wouldn't have been talking like that. No,
that's for sure. We'd have been a little more concerned, maybe a little more quicker. But
right, so that nobody had yet, nothing from No. 9 had told you that there was a disaster.
That's correct.
Right. Now, I wanted to ask you, because you expressed an opinion a few minutes ago, that I told you that I had called the sheriff's office, not because I had official information, I didn't, but I had received a call from Miss Simons out at the Mods Run ventilating shaft that the explosion doors had blown open and smoke was pouring out, and it was over No. 9. She thought, I ought to know No. 9 was probably in trouble. And, you know, I couldn't conceive of like it being not known by then. So I called the sheriff's office. Who was the desk, on the desk at that point?
Richard Martin.
Right. And I asked your opinion. I didn't obviously have any news. I couldn't say I knew anything. And I didn't ask for anything, you know, like cars, the way you had a request for cars. I simply said, have you all heard of No. 9? Blowing up, or any other mine blowing up, been an explosion? And the man said, we haven't heard anything, whoever it was, the voice. I asked you, would that necessarily, in your opinion, in those years, have gone on the log or the records because I requested nothing, or complained of nothing? Just asked a question, like, has it been a wreck, has it been an explosion,
In my opinion, it probably wouldn't have been logged. Probably would have been no record of it.
No record, because there was no specific complaint or no specific request for something.
Right.
There's nobody prowling, I'm asking for a police car. There's nothing of specific.
Right, that's right.
Perhaps today, with more careful recording or something, they might, I don't know how you do, they might...
Well, today we record.
You record, and therefore you've got a record of everything like that, okay. So in your opinion, it's just normal, under the norms then, that would not have been anything recorded.
Would not have been
Right.
recorded. Or
And since the number 9 request didn't still say there was an explain, it wouldn't have connected. In other words, they would have thought, well, some crank's asking some question, but here it's just a request for radio communication. That was what you were asked for, right?
right.
Okay.
Now, do you want to know whether there would have been a record of that or not?
Yeah, I would like to know whether the request from number 9 for 2 police cars would have been recorded.
It should have been recorded on the radio log because the 2 cars went into service.
You were dispatched, okay.
We were dispatched.
Now tell me how you were dispatched. Who went where and about what time you think that was? Just guessing, the log will show it.
Guessing somewhere around 5:45, somewhere in that neighborhood.
Right.
I can't tell you exactly because it's been years since I've seen the log, but we dispatched with 2 cruisers, one man to each car, and both of us left together at the same time, proceeded up 250 north, one right behind the other one, and on the way we decided which would go where.
You talked by radio.
We talked by radio back.
Who was the lead car?
As I recall, I believe Thompson was in front of me. At the time, I said, "Well, you go on up to Llewellyn, and I'll go to number 9 Tipple."
Okay. Now, did you turn right then into the town of Farmington to proceed to number 9?
Yes.
And you proceeded through Farmington, and then Farmington number 9 would be about a mile roughly past number 9, something on that order. I mean, past number 9 would be about a mile past the town of
Somewhere
Farmington.
between I'd say between a mile and 2 miles.
Between a mile and 2 miles.
Right.
And at the stoplight in Farmington, which was functioning at that in the middle, it's
right.
all time. It's not a nighttime.
No, at that time
right.
the stoplight was functioning.
Functioning at night.
Right.
When you came to a stop there, you became aware for the first time there was a vehicle right behind you in Farmington. Is that the point?
Yeah, that's right.
The vehicle behind you blinked its lights.
Right, and I think maybe he might have said
by radio or he
shouted
shouted
something. Go ahead.
Keep going. Go ahead.
Yeah.
All right. Then when you arrived at the mines, since you knew Lockie Riggs, the superintendent, you realized that this was Lockie Riggs behind you.
That's right.
That was the sequence, I think, because you went to the Tipple at number 9.
Right.
You didn't stop at the company store.
No,
you turned and went down the road
went down
and went
the,
into the main office, or what?
Fact of the matter is, I parked right beside the slope where the belt comes out of the slope.
And then where did you go to? Now let's follow you. Did you go into the office to watch Mr. Riggs and his assistants?
Mr. Riggs, as I recall, got out of his car and walked over to me, and he said, "We've got some troubles. I don't know what it is." And at this time, he said, "We have no telephone communication with the Llewellyn portal."
Okay.
Something to that effect.
Yes.
And I told him, I said, "Well, my other car is on the way up there and should be there shortly." Or
right. How was Mr. Riggs dressed, if you recall at that time? Was he he wasn't in a business suit? He was in casual
wear.
Casual wear. Okay. Did he then put on a hard hat and all that after he got in? When you next saw him, I mean, was he or?
Well, that thing I can't recall. I guess the next thing that comes to my mind was I saw men walking out the slope.
These were some of the first men walking out and who were on that ship but who got out safely.
Right.
Because
they were on.
Do you remember like Nate Stevens or who some of them were that came up? Walter Slavakovsky. Are there any of them that come to your mind that you know from years ago? Or?
The only thing I recall, one man told me he was a mainline motorman, and
that was Walter Slavakovsky.
Well,
and Nate
I
Stevens
don't
was
recall
the
his
black
name,
guy.
but he told me he was a mainline motorman, and he just pulled a trip of coal in and went to hook on his empties, and the power went off.
Yeah, right. They had not heard, the men in the mine were still unaware at this 8th end that there was an explosion at the Llewellyn end. You realized that later, okay?
Yes.
Tell me what else you recall, because you're the man experienced.
Well, at that time it's a little bit fuzzy, you don't, every little detail. I do remember my car calling,
Mhm.
and which I could talk to him direct from
Yeah.
Lou Allen. We could
This
talk
is now Thompson talking to you on the
That's
radio.
right.
Okay.
Thompson talked to me on the radio, and he said something to the effect that better get somebody up here. This place is blowed all to hell.
This is blowed all to hell. That's
Yeah.
your best recollection.
Yeah.
Okay. It's on the radio, so there's going to be
Yeah.
no record of that.
Right.
So he now has probably taken, what, 20 more minutes to get out to Llewellyn from the time you've taken about 5 minutes off Highway 250 to get into where you are.
Yeah.
What would you say he is? Another 15 getting to
He's
where
probably 10 or 15 minutes, yes.
All right, so about that time, 6 o'clock roughly, on the radio, he now is looking at Llewellyn Shaft. And we all looked at it on TV
Right.
later and know
Okay, yeah.
how awful it looked, you know. But he is saying this place is, what was it, blowed all to hell.
Blowed
Okay.
all to hell.
All right. So we better get some help, is that what he's telling you? And what'd you do, call the desk man? That was your job, to be the intermediate?
No, at this time, the only thing I'm really, I'm notifying company officials. In other words, I'm being nothing but a...
You're like an internal number 9 employee for this purpose.
Right,
So
for
you
this
tell
purpose.
Lockie that Llewellyn, what'd you tell him? You remember what you said?
I just can't remember exactly,
Best you
but,
recall.
I told him that my car had just called and said that place was blowed all to hell up there.
Mhm. What did Lockie say? Anybody say,
that-
oh my
that
God,
I-
or he's not?
That I can't recall.
You didn't go, you stayed with your radio.
I
You didn't
stayed
go
with-
into the planning, into the company office at any point.
Right, I stayed with the radio, with the car, which probably in time, I think then I did advise my desk sergeant to notify the sheriff, notify Chief Deputy Charles Dodd, and that we would be there standing by for any communication they might need.
Did you remain communication man?
Right.
For how long? Because how did they ever supplant you? What other means of communication could have later supplanted you? Did they?
Well, I didn't get relieved till 7:30 that evening.
All right, then for the next 15 hours almost, over 12 hours, did you remain communication or did you begin to take on other functions?
No, I remained communication.
What kind of communication can you recall? What else was interesting, and then what in specific did you have to do with, like, the word from the men who went to Mayhan's and shouted down anybody there? You remember there were 8 men at the bottom of Mayhan's shaft, the new shaft they just finished, which was a ventilating shaft not even finished yet, but it permitted a crew to lay down in the bottom and the explosion go over their heads, you remember? Well, what do you remember about any of that?
Not too much, except we called out other people, and we had other vehicles, and I know we had cars then starting patrol. There are different openings, fans and shafts, and
You ever remember helping to call anybody to get a bucket, or did they have to do all that without radio? Probably they had to send back their pickup trucks and pick up buckets and cranes. They had to get those men with buckets and cranes out of that place.
I didn't dispatch anybody. No,
Okay.
they probably.
It was done by hand, you might say.
Right.
Their company truck without a radio came back in and said, "Hey, we need this."
Right.
You saw a lot of activity going on around you, and more men coming up out of the shaft if you were standing there, weren't they, out of the slope? Didn't the A section come out about an hour and a half later?
Well, okay, they were men, kept continually coming out of the...
It was amazing. I mean, that a mine had blown up, but till after 7 o'clock, I think men were still walking out of it.
And of course, even, as I recall, even after 7 o'clock, they still hadn't patrolled all the shafts yet.
No. At that point, they didn't know that men were at the bottom of Mayhan's.
And of course, another thing at this time, I used to work in and around that mines back.
What was your experience? Help me understand that.
Well,
Were you an employee in Number 9?
Before I became a deputy sheriff, I hired a truck out to them.
Okay.
To when Jamison Coal and Coke
Yeah.
owned it. And so I was a little bit familiar with the property, but they had expanded so much in the last few years that even I didn't know all of their different properties and how far they had.
You used a phrase which I may have misunderstood a minute ago, Mr. Freeland. I think in describing the log, like you thought you went out there about 5:45. You said something like, "I haven't seen the log." I don't know whether you said in years or in about a year. Have you ever pulled that log out sort of to reminisce around it?
No, they packed it away in the storm, and
Yeah.
and
As far as you know, they.
and I couldn't be honest with you that I saw it all or not, because I wasn't back in that office then for
Yeah.
days
Right.
after that.
So that the log normally, let me see if I follow you on that. All logs by the month or by the quarter, by the month would be packaged.
By the month, and then
That would be the radio log, the complaint log. How many logs were there?
well, at that time there was only one log. They had a radio log, and that was all.
Okay.
They used a scribbling sheet, but which eventually it got towed away.
So the scribbling sheet could have had some of this stuff on it.
It possibly may.
It might have had my entry and been thrown away. Is that
Right.
the
It's
point?
possibly it could have. Yes.
Okay, I hear what you're saying. And the radio log, because you were dispatched, was
Right.
likely to show the dispatch
It
of cars.
would
Yeah.
show the dispatch of
Okay.
cars.
I'm with you. Okay, so that any earlier activity that of a lower level activity would not,
No,
as
not.
you indicated, likely, all probability.
I did fail to mention the scribbling pad, which
Okay.
is usually kept about a month, and then
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
it
Right.
winds up getting towed
Okay,
away.
then as far as you know, we probably see Mr. Sloan, the present chief deputy, and then he has the key or something. He can find like that month, and then you can find and Xerox
Okay,
copy that log.
it in turn will be packed for the whole year of '68. They'll be
Okay.
stored away by years.
I got you. Okay, because what may happen is just to see how interesting it is, of how the
Okay.
excitement starts. Is the log by shift? Like, will it show that shift
Oh,
and
yeah.
then the next shift?
Yeah.
And will it show the the man on the desk's name?
Yes.
Will it show your names as road officers or whatever you call
Well,
it?
it'll show unit numbers.
Unit numbers, okay.
Okay.
And then you've told me who was on then.
My unit number's 33.
He will show as number 33.
Mm-hmm.
And would that be Thompson, or he had another number then? Okay.
Thompson's got another number, and
Okay. Well, it'll be interesting. It'll be 33 and another number dispatched, right? Because he wouldn't.
Yeah.
You all decided which way to go. Now, who would have come on with day shift that day, as you now?
Randall
Jacob.
Wolf was one that come on day
All right.
shift.
Did you call some of them out earlier? You think when the sheriff was called, he began getting the day shift out by like 6 o'clock? Did you begin to get men?
Yes.
You may want to. I asked you, Mr. Freeland, if you think the sheriff got out any of that day shift earlier. What's your feeling? Did any of them show up any earlier or about the regular time?
No, they was coming out early because I heard them on the radio.
Okay.
They were
They
coming.
began getting men out. They
Right.
knew that. By now they knew it was terrible.
Right.
Okay.
They knew they were going to have a problem because Mr. Chief Deputy Dodd had been through this thing before.
54 explosion.
Yes, and also the fire that I believe at Grandtown.
And all of them draw thousands of spectators and families.
Right.
And you've got real police problems, don't you?
Absolutely, usually yes, especially right from in the beginning. As soon as word spreads,
Well, at Farmington, it never ended with the national press in there and the TV. You know, it was
Right.
like 10 days that you guys had problems.
we had a big
Mark-
problem.
I know because we were there with you. We remember, and there's almost problems like with just preachers. 10,000 preachers want to get in to be with the people, you know, and
Right.
you have to keep out almost anybody without.
You have a certain amount of radicals.
Yeah.
That a lot of people who really don't understand the coal mine and
Right.
protected the situation and wanting to do this and do that, things that are really impossible.
Yeah.
And
You have people that just want to, like you say, apply some theory they've got, like
Yeah.
let's pour water down the hole. You know, they want to
Yeah.
get in there and tell the management what to do to save the man. Then you get religious people who want to tell them they've had a vision and they know how to save them, and you get every kind in it. Don't you?
could I make one?
Sure, I want you to,
Now
yeah.
this was from the.
Any stories that are
This is
interesting,
from
too.
the '54
Yeah.
explosion.
Were you in that? Were you?
I helped seal it.
You
But I-
helped seal.
but
Tell
I-
me the story. Yeah.
But I was only employed as a with a hard truck for Jamison Coal and Coke,
Okay.
and I helped seal the slope.
Sure, I want you to.
And we had a fella came there. He said he was from Movie Town News. He wanted to know who he had to see about getting inside.
He wanted to go inside
He
and
wanted to
seal
go in-
mine. Why
he
did
wanted to go
seal it?
inside.
Yeah, that's pretty good. He didn't know there was pure death behind that barrier.
Didn't understand, you know.
Yeah, that you're sealing in poisonous
Right.
gases and trying to smother them.
And
Is anything in all that tragedy and horror, were there any funny things that you all sort of laugh about that occurred at number 9 and 68? I mean, were there humorous incidents of along that line that in some of your reminiscing ever strike you?
not just really, no.
Okay. They may have existed, but it was too much horror and too much tragedy to have 78 men.
Now,
You know, you had hundreds of relatives we were dealing with, remember?
when we finally got the thing broke down to, we'll say kind of regulated to a certain extent, we got broke down to about a 12-hour shift. I worked the night shift. In fact, I worked the night shift for almost 16 years.
Yeah.
So maybe some of the things that went on in the daytime I didn't see. I know we did have a little problem. Finally, long toward the end, before it was sealed, the press had bugged them quite a bit, so they was through personnel of Consolidation Coal Company, through their personnel manager, who was Mr. McCartney at the time.
That's right. Yeah. From
They set up a tour, and we ran into little problems between this tour, the personnel people, and the state police. Tried to give us there was a little friction there, and
this was a tour
for the
press?
news media, or the press.
What were they going to do? Take them down to show them how they were going to seal it if they had to?
They were taking them to the different
portals.
Portals. In other words, they wanted to see the Aces Run portal, which was still in operation at that time.
The slope was still.
And of course the slope and
well, that's where the first mine rescue squads went down to hunt and see how far they could penetrate the mine.
Then they wanted to see where they were drilling these wells.
Oh, the drilling.
They wanted to see the drilling,
sure.
but at the time where they were drilling the road was narrow, and they were transporting water for the drilling rig, so we had to bypass that because we were being an obstruction to the
Those were in
work.
some terribly isolated hollows that drilling was taking place.
And we then took them to the Llewellyn portal, where they were kept at a distance. And some of these things, I know we had a little problem with the state police. Now we were escorting we had like 3 big buses and a big camera truck and some stuff in this tour.
But I want you to hear it.
And we had a little problem with the state police. They didn't want us near the Llewellyn, which we thought the opinion of the safety part should have been left to the mine inspectors who were on duty at these different places, and there was a little problem there. But
how about with the press? Did you ever have any dealings? There was a great deal of press and media people.
Well, you have a little trouble identifying people, who's who, and who is supposed to be in an area, who has authority to be in a certain area where you're keeping everybody else out. Sometimes the media will try to use different means to gain to access because it takes a while to get organized. I mean, like, eventually you get everybody has a badge or he wears. And we had a little problem that. And then sometimes too between
where were you on that night shift? You said you went on the night shift. Where would you generally be, at the company store or down
we would patrol. Usually we set up. We had a guard post at the Aces Run intersection, and which is near the company store. We maintained guard post at the Mods Run. We maintained guard post at Moffin's Run, and also at Llewellyn. And then we used 2 cars, and we patrol. We just go from one guard post to check, see that everything was okay, that nobody had any problems. We kept them in with coffee.
Then except you were on communication for about 14 or 15 hours the first time. After that, things got a little better regulated. I hope.
We got down to somewhere around a 10 or 12 hour shift then, and also...
But by that point, you were at a post, pretty much. You weren't on communication anymore, or did you have to keep that?
My job was patrol. I patrolled with a cruiser. Now, we used two cruisers. We used one state police cruiser and one county cruiser. And we patrolled the post, and we just go from Llewellyn and make the different stops back down, and then we'd be there for maybe an hour, and then we'd start the whole thing over again. And we even
Did you come into the company store and sort of look around each time as part of that patrol?
We would maybe stop over and...
so you would remember when the families were at the company store for the first 3 days or so, and then as the press was sort of interfering with their grief too much, they had to be protected more. Some of them burst out in new crime and were moved down to James Fork Methodist Church.
We tried to leave this thing with the families up to the consolidations personnel people. We let them try to handle this, and if they had any problem, needed our assistance, then we'd assist them anyway if they needed any help. But
mostly that was a case of keeping out unauthorized personnel from the area rather than...
Right, and basically our job was this. We were there to assist Consol in any way we could, that is in their operation of trying to recover. If they had anything in their way, then we tried to see that it got cleared.
Okay.
Other words,
very good. You think of anything, Eli, that you're concerned with?
I'm curious, you say you have some mining experience.
I worked 2 years in Bradville mine up here at
Oh,
Bethlehem.
did you? I see. Well, were you familiar with did things unfold to you as you were there at the beginning?
In my mind, I could maybe kind of picture the situation there, and
because you were not a total stranger as an officer of the law.
Right. Really, I could understand the situation and seeing the great fire and smoke and the explosions. And I saw Llewellyn blow up once myself while we were there at the guard post.
Mr. Freeland, how much activity was there when you first approached when you went down over the hill to the whatever?
Yeah.
There was just a few men in the yard, and like I said, these men were coming.
Some of those had come up.
Did anybody follow you in other than what you told me?
No, other than Mr. Riggs.
Did you see a constant arrival of other superintendents or anything in that?
Well, eventually other mine personnel kept...
sure, like Kinsell, others kept coming in from Monongah, higher officials, but that took a while. I mean, that didn't happen.
It would take a while. They'd have to call them, and of course, different ones are there. Maintenance people, they're outside people.
They didn't use you on the radio for that. They were using their phone up
right,
there.
they were using their phone up there. The problem they had was they had no phone communication with the Llewellyn portal.
Yeah.
And they had no phone communication inside the mine.
Now let's go back to, they couldn't reach anyone in the mine except where their phone would ring at the bar. Anything on the eighth end hadn't been blown up, like they could still, that's how they told some of the guys to come back out. What else did they communicate with Llewellyn through you? What else happened that morning? Was there much more communication except Thompson telling you it's all blowed to?
That was really the biggest part of it. And then I know they used one of our cars. They went around to the different shafts and or they would call and say we send maybe so and so up to this place. And
were there any specific shafts or whatever? You mentioned Aces, you mentioned Mayhem, you mentioned Maud's Run. Was there anything that happened that might have stuck in your memory?
At Maud's Run, when they started to seal it, they tried sealing it, I believe, first without. They tried to put a cap on it. And I can't recall. I knew one of the inspectors, and he is now deceased. Kabowski was a mine inspector. Tommy Kabowski was at that particular shaft, and they had sealed it, and we were down at the tipple, and we felt a jar.
It blew out that whole damn seal. Tons and tons came out.
It blew that thing out of there.
Was that an opening where men went into?
No, it was a fan.
with the ventilating
It
fan.
was basically a ventilating shaft.
Yeah.
And
It was an unsuccessful seal. They like dropped in, I don't know, somebody said
Well, what happened-
tons and tons they put in there, and it blew it just out like a pop.
this one here, they tried to cap it, put a cement cap over it, and of course it blew out, blew the cap off.
Anybody get hurt?
And,
A lot of people have been.
no, but as soon as we felt it, and
You
we
were
knew
still down at...
we were at the tipple, and we felt the jar and the lights kind of fly, blinked, and we knew something had happened, and so we rushed to check those shafts, and of course we found Kabowski and they were okay. They said they had just been over and was taking a reading on it, had just left it and returned back to their
Yeah.
their
I
post.
think
when it
that
blew
was
off.
way up, like the 4th, 5th, 6th
Right,
year. It was
that-
not early
it
on. They
wasn't-
weren't trying to do any sealing early on. This was later.
This was later, yes.
I know in my account of the thing, I remember the mods run thing blows off. They try to do it and it's unsuccessful.
But what we would do, like I said, some of the things it's hard to remember, but we kept the car there by the tipple, and we had another car at Llewellyn all the time, and then we had one more, as I recall, was going here and there, taking a official if they needed a official with a radio. He would take them where they need to go, and then if they
Okay. You don't have any photographs or anything
No,
of that period that you kept?
have no pictures at all.
Ask the gum anybody?
Hasbro traveling.
Knock any potential cold you have this next week out of you. It saves getting a doctor's shot.
No, thank you.
I'm very grateful to you, Mr. Freeland, for just chatting with me about it.
Now, Mr. Thompson possibly can give you a
Blue
better,
Allen, yeah.
better picture of Blue Allen.
He lives at Norway.
Right. Just as you turn down in Norway, he lives in a fairly new house on the right.
Okay.
And
I may want to talk with you again, but I appreciate your telling me how the stuff's filed, because we'll have to talk to Mr. Swan.
okay.
People with the power to, because he's a public record, to see, can he get out 68 and can he find that? And we'll sort of see how the sheriff's office played a role that day.
Okay.
I thank you very kindly, Peter.
You're quite welcome. You're quite.
Volume up.
Just leave it as it is.
Yeah, I think it's playing. It's jumping, isn't it? We're in the kitchen of the home of Mr. Samuel Stout. Is that your correct name, Mr. Stout?
Yes, sir.
You'll have to speak, if you don't mind, so we all, even though I see you nodding your head, we got to speak so we can pick it up. That is your correct name?
Yes, sir.
And you live at the head of Maud's Run,
Yes, sir.
which if you turn off Route US 250 near Mannington, it means that we're in about as far as we can go into one of these hollows. Is that fair? We're now surrounded by the hills on 3 sides, okay? This is the hollow. We're out over the coal of Farmington number 9 in the direction of Llewellyn Shaft to the west.
Yes, sir.
And they have ventilating shafts in this hollow. Is that true?
That's right.
For a good many years, Mr. Stout?
Well, I don't know exactly when they did put it in here, but it wasn't very long after
Okay.
I moved up here.
All right. Did you not tell me that you own about how many acres in here at the head of this hollow?
About 250.
And the first 7 acres you bought with the house we're sitting in, you bought from Okie Toothman. Okay. And then you put together the rest of it.
Yeah.
Sitting with us, would you give us your name, because it is misspelled in the official hearings. Why don't you tell us your
Ronald Stull.
And how would you spell your last name?
S-T-U-L-L.
Okay, Mr. Stull, are you married a daughter of Mr. Stout's?
Yeah.
What is her given name?
Maxine.
Maxine, okay. And do you live pretty close by here, right in the head of this hollow as well?
Yeah.
Okay. And some of the things that we're going to discuss you had to do with, because I want you to tell me if it's true that on November 20, 1968, your wife was ill. Do I understand that right?
Yeah.
And she was where? And was she in a hospital?
Yes, she is moving.
in Wheeling in the hospital, and therefore you were boarding in this house at that time?
Yes, me and my other daughter.
All right. And you worked where at that time? Where were you employed?
For Hawkins Lumber Company.
Okay. Then when would you normally have been awakened, you might say as a friend and boarder and relative, you know, in this home to go to work? When would they have gotten you up normally?
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock, okay. Is it fair to say, with us is Mr. Eli Zivkovich, who knows mining extremely well from years of experience here. And I'm very grateful to you. Just tell it the way it was, okay? Because some of the things you both are aware, they didn't ask you enough questions. Nobody ever asked you anything, Mr. Stull.
Right.
You were talked about, but never were asked what you knew, okay? And as far as I know, Mr. Stout had much more to tell that nobody ever asked, because they were, I think Mr. Stout feels, trying to say that some of the things he heard and saw and smelled almost didn't happen. So that I want you now to feel none of that fear. You say, you interrupt me, and you tell it any way you like, okay?
Sure.
But you'll have to speak up if you don't mind. I'll see your heads nodding, but you tell it so it goes on the record, okay?
Okay.
We want to take you back to the morning, the early morning before dawn on November 20, 1968, because you all are part of a drama and a tragedy that caused 78 men to be buried through no fault of your own, right underneath where we're sitting in part, right?
That's right.
And you happen to have some facts, and we want to get those facts out if they'll ever help, you know, to get the straight story as to what happened. Would you start in that morning and tell us, Mr. Stout, how you woke up and what was said and so forth? And you just speak the story as you remember.
Well, as I said, that morning we heard the explosion, and my wife said the pump house blew up, and she said get up and see what happened. There's fire someplace. Well, I got up and looked, and went to the kitchen window and looked out for the pump house, and I didn't see no fire. And I went back in and laid down on the bed, and she said, I smell smoke. Well, I didn't discover the fan was down then, see, because we was used to hearing it, and we didn't discover it was down. And so I come back in, and she said there's something burning someplace. She said, smothering me. I went back and looked again. When I looked again...
When you say you went back, you
I went
brought
back
us
and
in
looked-
here and went into this kitchen
Yeah, and looked again.
out this window.
Yeah.
This is where you look at the pump house, right?
Yeah, that's
From this
right.
kitchen window. A
What
double
time?
window.
What time I was in here? She said, "What time is it?" And I said, "It's 4 o'clock to the clock." That's what I said.
Now, can I interrupt you a moment? You told me it was a clock that's no longer in your home,
No,
and I'm pointing close to this window that you were looking at.
that's right.
And it hung on a wall over what was then the kitchen stove.
Yeah,
is
the
that fair
stove.
statement? Mr. Stull, do you corroborate that?
Yeah.
And I want to stop you to, Mr. Stull, what source of light, what would you say would have existed for a person waking up in darkness to see anything with?
Well, I say you could see the clock because it was shining through into the kitchen.
This was the hall light
Yeah.
shown in here, right?
Yeah.
And it really took very little light in darkness to show that clock. Is that
Right.
your experience?
Yes.
Would you have been able, and did you in the dark be able to see that clock with the hall light on?
Yes, I could see it with the...
What do you know, and would you comment on Mr. Stout? Like, is he half blind? Does he have cataracts? Would he not know if a deer went by, if he went deer hunting? What do you think about his vision?
His vision's all right.
How good is it?
Well, as far as I know, it's as good as mine.
Okay. You have reason to believe it's fairly accurate. If he says
Right.
he was able to see
Mr.
that clock.
Stout, does Mr. Stout hunt?
Yes.
Has he had any luck with the deer this year?
Yeah, he caught one this year.
This year, this is 8 years after the event. You didn't lasso it either? You just, what,
Well, I
put the
shot
deer in
it.
your sights?
I
And
shot it.
You shot it?
Yeah.
No trouble hitting it?
No.
Okay. We're trying to just identify whether he could have seen it. Sufficient light, Mr. Stull, to see it?
Yeah.
And his accuracy of vision is well-known, as good as yours. You say.
Right.
And you have excellent vision.
Yep.
You don't appear to wear glasses even, maybe 20/20.
I drive an automobile and
Okay. Do you wear glasses?
No, sir.
Okay.
No,
All right.
sir.
I wanted to, get that straight, because before we began going on the record, there was a feeling on, your part that maybe people were saying you didn't see what you saw and so forth. Now, Mr. Stull, may I interrupt Mr. Stout as he tells the story? You've heard this much. They said they smelled smoke. You're still asleep. You're a younger man. What is your age now, Mr.?
36.
36. You were about 28 at that point.
Right.
You're sleeping soundly. You're not up yet. When you first awoke, was there any noticeable smoke in there?
I smell smoke.
As soon as you awoke, you were
Yeah.
conscious of smoke. It would not surprise you that inside of this house, at that point, somebody had earlier
Right.
smelled smoke. Okay. When your wife said, "Smoke is smothering me," were you conscious, or is your nose a little less sensitive than hers? Were you
I
conscious of
smelled the
smoke?
smoke, but it was rubber smoke, you see. It
Okay.
wasn't coal smoke, it was rubber smoke.
Right.
It was,
Right.
And wires were burning in the mines.
Well, that's your guess, and therefore, okay. Now, you don't yet know that nobody knows in the whole world at this point there's been a mine explosion. You're looking at, you're still
That's
coming
right.
back out of
Yeah.
bed to look for the pump house.
Yeah.
It's been 4 o'clock, you're going sort of back and
Yeah.
forth.
Yeah,
You may
back
sit
and-
around and think about it. You haven't got anybody up yet.
No.
How much time maybe goes by before you told me you got up, Mr. Stull.
Well, I don't know. It wasn't very long. I'll say maybe half an hour anyway.
All right. In about a half an hour, if you had a guess, it's a little before 5.
Yeah, I think before
All right,
5.
Before 5. You get Mr. Stull up.
Yeah.
Do you remember what you said to him when you shook him awake?
Yeah. I told him the fan was down.
How did you figure that out?
Well, the fan wasn't
The
running. The fan
Oh, and you could hear the motor as it
Yeah.
runs.
See, it made a lot of noise then. It blew straight this way.
All right. At the moment we're sitting here, I don't hear the fan running. Are your ears picking it up? My ears?
No, you
full?
can't hear it now because they put this big box on it.
All right. But at that point, a part of your world and consciousness was the motor
Yeah.
sound of that fan.
Yeah.
So if you stopped, if somebody said, "I smell smoke," you would suddenly notice
Yeah.
you don't hear the fan motor. Huh? Okay. You know the fan's down.
Yeah.
Now, what was worrying you? You've been working underground at Rachel. What happens when a fan goes down? Why would you be concerned that a fan's down?
Well,
As a coal miner that's retired.
if the fan went down, they always called us out right away, you know.
Would you say, Rachel, when you worked there, was a kind of management that knew what the law was and they got their men right out of the line?
Yes. Well,
Did you work for the old Joanne?
Yes, sir. I worked there for Joanne. I worked there for Joan. I worked there 32 years.
All right. So that a miner would be quite worried. A fan's down.
Yeah.
What does that mean? No ventilation in the mine?
No ventilation.
Are these gassy mines out this way?
Oh, yeah.
All right. So that there's great danger now
Yeah.
to the men, huh? And you're now very aware. Maybe they don't know it, or is that what's in your mind?
Well, at the time that I worked in the mines, if the fan went down, we went to the dinner hole and we set 5 minutes.
Mhm.
If the fan wasn't started in 5 minutes, we went out.
You were retreated right out of the mine.
Yeah,
You started back on your jeeps or whatever, and you
That's
got
right.
out.
But we went to the dinner hole and set 5 minutes.
Okay. So you're concerned, though. You're a human man. You're concerned. You're living out over near a ventilation fan, and the fan's down. Now, when you wake up, you told him the fan's down. Do you remember that, being awakened that morning?
Yeah.
Did he ask you to do anything immediately, or did you dress first and then meet him in the kitchen, or what?
I just put my clothes on, come in, and he told me he asked me to go down and look at the
You
ship.
didn't shave. You didn't get ready normally to go to work. It's
No.
way before your work time, right? Okay. And what did you do then? He asked you to go down and look.
And I went down the shaft. And
How'd you go down there?
I had a small Volkswagen, and I drove it down, and the lights on it, you could see the doors blowed open, and the smoke was coming out the.
Okay.
With the
You
doors
know, you
closed.
pointed up your car in the
I
direction.
went down around so I could see the shaft.
Okay. The explosion doors were open?
Yeah.
Okay. Somebody asked the question with a fan blade sticking in, or that wasn't your concern. There was smoke pouring out.
That's right.
Right, and that. You don't know.
And I wasn't down there very long, I come back and told him.
You might have watched it for a few minutes
Yeah,
to see.
just for a minute.
Did you know the seriousness at that point, do you think?
Not really.
You haven't never worked underground, and it could have been anything to you, what it
Right.
meant. Later, you could put together
Yeah.
how terribly serious you were looking at. Did you at that point meet a mechanic or anybody from the mine? Did you see anybody
No.
there, anywhere near there? Was there any activity, anybody standing on the Simon House porch or
No.
anything? Okay. So there's no activity, you take a look at it and you turn around and come back.
Yeah.
You don't know at this point that there's anybody aware of it but you two,
Right.
as far as you know, in the dark, okay? And you come back to this house. What do you tell Mr.?
I told him that the doors was open on top and there was smoke coming out.
Okay. Will you keep an eye on the expiration of the return? Thank you very much. What did you then, what was your concern? Now you know smoke coming out, what did it mean to you, mister?
Well,
Is it worse than you thought it was? The fan isn't just
I
down?
know what happened, because I'd been in one of the explosions
When were you ever in an explosion?
down at Rachel.
When was that
That
explosion?
was about a year before I retired.
Try to give me about what year did you retire? And I'll try to go
Well,
back.
I've been
with you.
retired now 8 years. I
Well,
retired about 6 months before this mine was there.
all right. You retired at the beginning of 1968, and maybe in 67 you had a fire or an explosion at Rachel. What do you
No, I'll tell you what happened. I was a pumper, you see. After they cut the cutting machines off, I went to pumping
Mm-hmm.
because they wanted me to run a miner and I wouldn't do it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because I was tired of eating the coal dust.
Mm-hmm.
So I cut
Are you drawing black lung benefits
Yeah,
now?
yeah.
You are, okay.
And so they'd call me out on Sunday night, and I'd go in the mine after the fire bosses come out. But there wouldn't be nobody in the mine but me, you see. Because when the fire bosses come on top of the ground, I went in, see. That was about an hour before the shift went in. I went in, put the power on, and they had a miner hung up in a mud hole.
Was it covered up or?
No, it was hung up.
Hung up, okay.
Hung up
When
in
you
a
say a
mud.
miner, you're talking about a mining
Continuous
machine.
miner.
A mining
Continuous
machine.
miner, I
Yeah,
got it,
continuous
okay.
miner, hung up in a mud hole,
Mhm.
and they couldn't get it out, and they told me to go in there, and they had a car of rock dust to set in there. Well, I was carrying rock dust out of that there car, putting under the cats of that miner, trying to dry up that water, and I had a sump pump. I pumped the water out with a sump pump.
You're all alone. not
Oh,
even-
nobody there but me. Right down from my pump, I had a big pumper running down here. I started this big pump up. It was one of them big old pumps that makes a lot of noise. All right. I could hear that pumper running plain when I was up there trying to get that miner out. There was a section put off down there, 8 blocks from me. Went on down in one west.
Development
Yeah.
towards the west, okay.
Yeah. And I didn't know that section was running, you see, because I didn't know what section was running because I was in there myself.
Mhm.
And the shift had come on at that time because I was in there trying to get that miner out. All right. I just stooped over to pick up a sack of rock dust out of the car, and this explosion happened.
Where was it centered? Where did it appear to come from?
I didn't know
Mhm.
because it knocked me down. I didn't know. And
How
this-
far did it throw you?
Well, he just knocked me down. This cushion up knocked me down. All right. There's so much dust come up there I couldn't see nothing. And I tried to get down to the dinner hole to get a respirator
Mhm.
because I know the explosion was someplace, but I didn't know what it was at. And I got down to the dinner hole and I still couldn't find them down there. But I could hear this pump running, and I went down along the rib, held my hand along the rib, walked